Hello, everybody, and welcome to the One Fear Per Year podcast, where we show up even when we're not feeling the best, even when our voice is crackly and we've been a little sick. And I did not want to miss today because I am joined by the very lovely, and I will tell you a little bit more about her in a second, but Jennifer Fondrevay. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, really.
So, funny story that the way I met you is we were going to the National Speakers Association conference, and you can sign up to go to a dinner that's organized by a lovely soul out there who's, committed to giving back and doing all that. So I just, for whatever reason, found your group and I put my name on there. I think I was the last slot, actually. I was like, ooh, this is a full group. I'm going to join this group.
This looks fun. I don't know these people. The names sound fun.
I was like, Jennifer Fondrevay, are you kidding me? I got to be a part of this.
Little did you know.
Little did I know that then we all get this email that has everybody, I think there were 10 of us, everybody's picture and bio that you had compiled and sent to us. So I just want to say how amazing that is to show up in that way when it's not expected. It's more work, but you did something that really brought us all together, even pre-dinner time. So what motivated you or inspired you to kind of do that? I'm curious.
So one, thank you for having me for this conversation because I feel like it's the Mutual Admiration Society. I loved hearing your backstory, and your listeners already know it, but for me it was new and refreshing. And I would say, it's funny. I grew up in marketing and advertising, 25 years corporate career, and one of the things that you learn is that customer engagement, whether it's a consumer or it's business to business, start as early as you can. What's every touch point that you can have with that person that will influence how they think about you, how they think about the event, how they think about, what your company is putting on. And so I thought, and it took some time, but it really wasn't that much time to create that little bio book. And I thought, I'll have fun. I put everyone's name in AI and I said, give me a paragraph that just says, what do they speak on? How long have they been speaking? And if they aren't speaking, what lights them on fire? And so AI created all those paragraphs that were hysterical, and we all got a chance to find out what AI hallucinated for each person. But it was just an opportunity for people to get excited before coming to the event. And, little effort on my part, but it made a big difference for people to feel a sense of one another before we even showed up at the dinner.
And it really did. It made such a drastic difference that it really impacted me in that way that something stays with you for a while and you go, oh, and that's what I love. I love people who lead by example. I mean, it's great to teach things and talk about stuff and from a stage or facilitating or whatever, but when you see somebody put something like that into action in real life, that's when it really clicks and you go, oh, this is something that I could carry on in the future. So anyway, I just loved it. Love you. Think you were just so amazing. And tell us about this. You're known as the M&A Whisperer, which I also thought was so cool. So give everybody a little background on that.
Well, it's funny. This conversation is bringing up a lot of comments that I could make. So I'm going to go one by one. So M&A, mergers and acquisitions. I alluded to the fact that I used to be in marketing and advertising. And in my role in marketing, I went through 3 separate multi-billion-dollar merger and acquisition deals. And anyone who's been through a merger and acquisition knows that they come with an enormous amount of change and uncertainty. I've been acquired. I've been acquirer. I've been acquired by private equity, which is its own unique event. And I learned a lot as a leader, as an executive through those, both good and bad lessons. For the first acquisition I went through, not prepared for the emotional toll that it took not just on me, but on my team, on the organization. And so I wrote a book. Initially, it was just going to be a survivor's handbook. Here's how to survive M&A. It's called Now What? A Survivor's Guide for Thriving Through Mergers and Acquisitions. And my plan was really just to put the book out there and continue to be a chief marketing officer. But I had a number of CEOs say, you need to do more than just a book. This book is too important. It's going to help a lot of people, but no one's going to read this book unless you're doing something around it. And so one CEO called me an M&A Whisperer because I said, oh, I can't be a consultant. I hate consultants. They descend on organizations with like a swarm of locusts with PowerPoint templates and Excel spreadsheets, and they think everyone fits neatly in a box. And he said, well, then be a good consultant. He said, you've got an insight on mergers and acquisitions that people don't talk about. And so he labeled me an M&A whisperer. And that's really, I take that role very seriously because I talk about the things that people don't tend to talk about when an organization is going through massive transformation. What I've learned since then is it's not just a merger and acquisition that can see that level of transformation and the emotional reaction amongst employees. And so it turns out that an M&A whisperer can help in all types of in all types of transformation.
I bet. And so speaking of fear, with that, what are some of the fears that you help your clients walk through? What are some of the fears that they have? And then what are some tools that you're able to give them to make that process a little easier?
Well, it's interesting. I'd say if I were to sum it up in a nutshell, for people who are going through a merger and acquisition, or I would say just a business transformation in general, the fear is not being valued in the future organization. A fear that I don't know what I'll contribute. I don't know if I'll have the same value that I have now. And so that identity that you have with the company, that the company is now changing into something else, whether it's a merger, an acquisition, digital transformation, AI, whatever the forcing mechanism is, the fear is worrying and being afraid that you won't be valued in the future company, that you won't have something of value to contribute. And that is, for me, I'll say it's what I attack, it's what I address, it's what I want to help people know that you have value. You absolutely have value, but it's your job to figure out what that value is that you're going to contribute to the company moving forward. No one's going to tell you. They're not going to take the time. You may have had an amazing relationship with your boss. He or she is now worried about their own value because of the transformation. So it's your job to get clear on what it is that you can contribute to the company moving forward. And I would say, when you said tools and processes, the thing that I work with both senior leaders and individuals is focus on what you can control. There's a lot of distractions when your company's going through transformation, a lot of noise. Focus on what you can control, and what you always can control is your talent, your effort. So your talent, what you bring, your effort, where you put your energy, and your attitude, keeping a positive attitude through all of this. So that's what I focus on.
Absolutely. So a lot of probably mindset shifts or just encouragement around that. And I love how you broke that down: talent, effort, and attitude. And it is so true. This is fascinating that it really is. It doesn't matter if it's for business or your personal life. At the end of the day, like, that fear of not being good enough is what I'm hearing, fear of not having value, being worthy. And that just shows up, whether that be at home in different ways, at work in different ways. And so focusing, like, intentionally, what can I control? And what's your best advice or suggestion to people who have, because I can tend to be a controlling person to feel safe.
Yeah.
I've struggled with that a lot in the past. And so, like, surrender's my word, letting go, things like that. But what would you say to somebody who has that tendency to want to control everything, to help them just take those baby steps to start focusing just on what they can control and releasing everything else?
Well, it's funny because I just did a workshop with a company, two companies, their leadership, one acquired the other. And I love doing these workshops because it shows the CEO is smart and says, okay, we got to be smart. How do we make sure we do this right? And the exercise that I do for this, and Janice, actually hearing you talk, I was like, this could be absolutely applied to just personal. It doesn't have to be just mergers and acquisitions. But what I say is, I want you to list all the business challenges that are bugging you right now, everything that's irritating you, all the challenges. And usually, I'll say they get 5 minutes, and there's a list, 10 or more, right? I try and say everything that's really irritating you, it's a challenge. Then the next step is, on that list, circle those things that are directly in your control, meaning you're responsible, you're accountable, and check those things that you can influence. Maybe they're not directly in your responsibility, but you can influence them. Someone else on another team, is in charge of that, and you could weigh in again to help resolve that challenge. And then the third step is anything that's not circled or checked, cross it off. You have to go through the process of crossing it off, because if you can't control it and you cannot influence it, it is not yours to worry about. It is not yours to be, taking up mind share space, because that's what it does. Those are the things that take up space in your brain that are a distraction. That's the noise in your head. And the fourth step is, when you give the list to your boss, right? Here are the things that I can control and I can influence. Help me prioritize. And by the way, these things that I can't control or influence are challenges that our team is facing. Because the boss can then receive and say, wow, I didn't realize that this thing being unresolved, because this happens a lot in mergers and acquisitions, or again, transformation in general. There's stuff that's distracting the team that they can't control, but the more the boss sees, everybody seems to keep having this one challenge on their list. We better address this because it's slowing us down and it's a distraction. But you meeting with your boss to then prioritize, these are the things I can control and influence. What's the most important? Where do I need to put my effort? Because as you and I know, Janice, right now, people are burned out. People are tapped out. So where you put your energy and effort is critical. You need it to be prioritized and aligned with what your boss and your colleagues think is the greatest priority. And then after that, you have an effort plan. But as you said, you can apply that to life, right? What are the things that are distracting me, that are taking up way too much time in my brain, that I cannot control and I cannot influence?
Which is, I love that in the sense of writing it down,
Yes.
because, for someone like myself that ruminates a lot and can't sleep sometimes because the thoughts just keep spinning.
Yep.
If you sit there and do what you just said, and you're able to cross something off a list and then circle the things that you can have some control over or influence, that just liberates, like you said, just yourself to actually get also what I feel is very necessary in life and business, which is that relax, reset, rejuvenation time of just self-care and really taking care of yourself. And if there's so much up here, it's like feels like you're going crazy sometimes. So
It does.
I really love that kind of practical step that can help you put this onto paper and then really figure out what's my next best step that I can control, and just leave the rest. The rest, if we can't do anything about it, the acceptance of that and then doing what we can do.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm curious, in your own life, how has fear shown up for you, whether it be in business or personal life? Has fear, that emotion of fear, been something that you've dealt with a lot or not so much?
Oh my God. All the time, right? I mean, what do they say about authors and speakers? Essentially, you write the book because it's a book you needed. You speak because it's a message you need to hear. So I feel like I've covered it both in written format and in speaking. Um, and I will say it's why I could so quickly articulate for you fear in business. It's because I had worked really hard to get to where I had gotten to when I went through my first acquisition. And I was so proud. Yeah, I had moved to Europe with my husband and two kids to Paris, France. I speak half French. Excuse me, I'm half French. I speak French. Never thought that, my Frenchness would actually help. But the company Navtech wanted a marketing director in Europe, but they were looking for an American because you'd be going back and forth to headquarters a lot in Chicago. And, I spoke French. I was the perfect candidate for the job, but who knew that would happen? And I absolutely loved that job. I loved my team. It was amazing. And when we got acquired, it felt like I was on quicksand. And this is no knock on Nokia. Hindsight's 2020. I mean, Nokia was going through a lot when they acquired us. So, and this comes through in my book and my work. There's no good or bad guy in this merger acquisition deal. But the fear that I had was, will I be good enough for what the future holds? Will I have something that they will think is of value? And you can see a different side of people because people react when they're afraid, people react in different ways. If you've ever seen the TV show Survivor, when people are trying to survive, you don't even always see the best version of them. And so, I don't think a bad version of me showed up, but I definitely was just trying to figure out my way. And that's why in my book, right, I talk about the stages of grief. You've identified with a company for a while, and now it's turning into a company you don't know, and you don't know what your future is. So absolutely. I think I'm at least at a point where I can understand what drives those fears for others because I've lived it and walked it myself. So it makes me, I would say, a more empathetic consultant and speaker because when I speak to audiences, particularly if they're in the middle of a merger and acquisition, I mean, I've had people come up to me afterwards and say, everything you said is how I feel. Like, how did you know? And I said, because I've been there. I've been on all sides. I know what this is like. So you'll get through this, but you got to be smart. You got to be intentional. You got to know your value.
Yeah.
And to the exercise we just did, focus on what you can control.
And what is the one thing that you felt helped you the most during that time period of feeling like you're on quicksand, you're scrambling, you have that deep fear of what's next, what value am I going to bring, those kind of things. Is there one particular thing that really helped ground you, center you, that helped walk you through that fear, that place?
During it, no. I would have to say I went through the stages of grief that were identified by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I did a version of the stages of grief that you can go through when your company is transforming. I use mergers and acquisitions, but again, you and I have just talked a lot about the fact that it's transformation in general. So I was absolutely in denial for a bit. I was definitely angry for a bit. I definitely went through the bargaining, and I had a long period in the depression stage. That was probably the biggest fear. Will I be good enough for what the future holds? And then I got to acceptance. I understood, okay, I may not be happy with where this is going, but there's a role that I can play and I need to accept it. And I need to own that no one is going to find that role for me. It's on me to do that. But what I can say, Janice, is what writing that book, it has been my salvation, has been my way of saying, okay, I went through this. Maybe you're going through it too. Here is my roadmap for what's ahead, and to know that it's just stages. that you won't stay permanently in any one of these stages. You will move on, but it's up to you to move on. No one's going to do it for you. There won't be some outside hand that moves you forward. You need to do that. And that's what I learned through that moment. And I'm just thankful I had the idea to write about it and put it in a book to help others.
Isn't that beautiful? The things, the pain and the fear and all of that that we experience, when we're able to then use that in a purposeful, meaningful way. I just feel like that's uh it's the best. It's kind of the full
I wish
circle.
I wish I'd been as smart when I was going through it. When I was going through it, I was going through it. So I think I was a decent leader. I was like, man, I wish I'd had this book, which is why, like I said, you write the book because it's the one you wish you'd had for yourself.
Absolutely. Mine is kicking the people pleasing habit. There's a reason why we write the things we write. And last question, you have just been so amazing to talk to. No right or wrong answer. If you could choose an exact opposite word of fear, just one word that's the exact opposite, for you, what would that word be?
I have to say the word that first came to my head was joy. Because I feel that with joy there's freedom. There's it's just pure joy, pure bliss. And fear, to me, that conjures up repressive, just holding you in a box. And joy, the word just makes me think of release and freedom. So that's what came to mind.
I could not have said that better myself. Everybody, go out there, experience joy, experience freedom. Know that that you are bigger, greater, more powerful than those fears that threaten to hold you back, and you are here for a reason. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining me. We'll see you everybody next time.
Thank you.